Great. For having us, and Mary, I appreciate it. I got to do one of these a couple years ago, and I hired, out of that original training, 2 of those folks ended up coming to work for me, and I've subsequently done these seminars and a couple other times, and they've been real helpful, and I end up meeting a lot of neat people. So I look forward to meeting you all personally tonight at Scholz's, and we'll have some beer. So first I want to talk about fundraising. This is the worst part of a campaign. Everybody thinks this is the least sexy, the least fun, if you will. The truth is it's the most important. You've heard probably the line that money is the mother's milk of all politics. That's true. You can't run a campaign if you don't have money. Now some will say, well, you could run an internet campaign. Well, you can, but you can't run a large-scale, professional, modern campaign without money. You need less of it today, fortunately, but you still need money to run a real campaign, okay? So how do you go about raising money? Well, the first part is we want to set up our committee, and we want to do it legally. In every jurisdiction, they have their own set of rules, depending whether you're running for local office, state office, federal office. Local encompasses both county races, municipal races, school board races, all those sorts of things. And each of those levels of campaigns, in Texas at least, have different sets of rules. I think in Austin you can only raise $100 from an individual if you're running for the city council, whereas if you're running for governor you can accept an unlimited amount of money as long as it's not corporate money. So that's a vast difference right there. On the federal level you can accept $2,300 per campaign, and that means per primary, and then another $2,300 for the general. Other states have rules that are similar to the federal. Texas is what we call still the Wild West when it comes to fundraising. The laws are pretty wide open, with the only prohibition of the corporate money. That's on a state race. I do some work in Illinois, and it's pretty interesting there. Not only can they accept all forms of money up to any amount, but they can also accept corporate money. So that would be the extreme limit, would be in Illinois. And then an Austin City Council race would be sort of the opposite end of that spectrum as far as how restrictive it is, in the sense that you can only get $100 per person. Boston City Council races are $500 per person. So those are on the other end of the scale of what you can accept. So the first thing you have to do is find out the rules. What kind of committee do I have to set up? What are the rules as far as what kind of contributions can I accept? What amount of contributions can I accept? I'm working a district court judge race here now, and those are interesting. They have their own whole set of rules. Not only can you only raise certain amounts, but you can only spend a certain amount. In this case, it's a rural campaign. They're only allowed to raise and spend $100,000, period. So it's a tricky campaign to figure out, well, how do you get that $100,000, and then, of course, how do you spend it in the most efficient way? So there's all sorts of different rules and regulations you got to check on, because one of the first death blows that can come to a candidate is they didn't follow these rules from Jump Street and they messed it up. So that's very important. So B, so how do you go about raising money? I hear this question over and over from all sorts of candidates, and I always say to them, if you were going to wake up and give away your own money, what would it take? Could it take a letter in the mail? Sure.
Sorry, Jeff, but could you talk a little bit about establishing a secretary
or a treasurer
for your campaign?
Sure. On every campaign, and feel free to stop me as we go, folks, and ask questions, okay? In every campaign, you'll have to designate the candidate or the committee. So usually, let's say you're the Donna Howard campaign. The name of your committee is Donna Howard for state representative. Donna Howard, the candidate, is a part of the committee, but then there's a second person who also bears legal responsibility, and it's the treasurer. The treasurer is an official person that files the reports back to our rules. Everybody has a different set of reporting dates, and reporting requirements about who you've raised your money from, and you have to periodically report that. And so the treasurer is ultimately responsible for that. It depends on what size your campaign is to the real use of your treasurer. If you're running for governor or lieutenant governor or any office over $1 million, let's say, your treasurer is typically an attorney or a CPA, and a tax attorney or a CPA, an accounting firm, will handle your report. The campaign will keep an internal document or database that will compile that stuff, but then hand it over to a professional bookkeeper or a person that does that sort of thing for a living, because it's so important, again, to get it right. Now, if you're running it, that's the top of the spectrum. Obviously, Hillary and Giuliani, they have a whole floor of lawyers in D.C. taking care of their report. It's that complicated. But that's one extreme. The other extreme is you're running for school board and you're going to raise $3,000 from 30 people. Well, I would suggest that you act as your own bookkeeper in that example and keep all your own records and documentation and file it that way. And the treasurer, very often in a race like that, is the candidate themselves, or it's the candidate's spouse or someone very close to them. They're trying to avoid paying an accountant or someone like that to do it because it's not very complicated. Sure.
Somebody once suggested to me that a good way to establish a treasurer is just find somebody well-known in the community, somebody well-liked, who's not interested in politics, but somebody that lots of people know and like, and that makes your...
I mean, there's all kinds of advice about what kind of treasurers. My professional advice is to hire someone that does that for a living and is very close to you. I don't care if they're well-known in the community or not. The place it shows up is in the little disclaimer you've all seen on a mail piece or something. It'll say, paid for by Donna Howard Committee, so-and-so treasurer. Well, I mean, come on. Unless you're a real deep insider and studying that stuff, which most voters are not, that stuff doesn't matter so much. Get somebody you trust and that, they understand the importance of breaking the law and they're there with you. It's not a figurehead political person. It can be, but it's more of a dangerous game doing that. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So how do you raise money? Well, again, this is the classic question of how do you do it? Well, it starts with what's going to make someone give away their money? Okay, most people in America are not activists like you all in this room. If you're in this room, you care passionately about politics, you seek it out, you read the news about it, you're on the internet, you're in meetings like this or seminars like this trying to learn more stuff. That's unusual. You're not a typical person in politics. Most people aren't paying attention. So when they wake up every day and they gotta, feed the kids and take the dog here and go to work and take care of their normal life, what's it gonna take to make them give away some of their money? Everybody says, is it an event? Is it an email? Is it a letter? You hear all these classic ways you're gonna raise money. We're gonna have this or that event, barbecue. Well, look, folks, if you're gonna give away money, the first thing that's gotta happen is somebody has to ask you for it. And I don't mean ask you for it in a letter or in some third-party kind of way. You need to ask for it directly. And the best person to ask for it is the candidate. Okay, the candidate is the one putting their name on the line, who's going to actually appear on the ballot. They would be the public official to go and make these important decisions. So if they care enough to do that, then they have to care enough to raise money, period. And so, they always, I hear it all the time in campaigns, let's form a committee to have an event, to do this, to do that. Look, that's all fine and well. But it starts with you have to ask somebody to raise money. And if you form a committee, you have to ask that person, if you want to sit on the committee, will you raise me $5,000? Period, shut up. Or 500 or 50,000 or whatever the case may be in your committee level. But what it all starts with is asking for it, all right? And the best person to ask for it is the candidate themselves. Now, in our mind's eye, we think about the presidential campaign because that's the sexiest politics and it gets the most coverage, et cetera, et cetera. And it's different at that level. Hillary doesn't have to sit around and call every single person that gives her a check, nor Giuliani. On the flip side, what makes those big campaigns go around are still very large donors and people that go and bundle or raise big sums of money, $50,000, $100,000. And you can bet that Hillary or Giuliani or whoever is still calling that level of donor and asking them, will you raise this money? I worked in the Clinton campaign in '92. And everything was, precise down to the minute. His schedule was minute by minute. I remember one day in August, the schedule was 32 pages. And I just thought, God, if I did this in my life, I'd be doing something, let alone a day. It was crazy, the schedule they keep. But what was interesting was every single place we went, there was a dedicated landline, what we called a hold room. And he sat there and he made calls, to donors and to political types and the like, in the process of going about raising money. Now, our Republican friends, and when he became in the administration, they liked to hound him because he was, quote, always raising money. The truth of the matter is he had to always be raising money. And that applies to most candidates, just to be fair.